bike home. I mean, it hasn't been launched yet, but I'm going home with it.
Yeah.
So to go back to answer, it's been a long way around, but no, I mean, the bikes now are so good. It's so much more fun.
So retirement's treating you well then? You've already because we spoke just a moment there. So what have you been up to? Oh, I got back from Mont St. Anne, a few days in Whistler, Pemberton, of course, a few days around here.
Well, I got straight into work, did the filming, flew out to Vancouver, spent a bit of time with my wife and Elliot Jackson and his girlfriend in Vancouver. And then, it was Thanksgiving weekend. So, it was, I went up to Whistler, didn't take a bike, went to the spa, this Scandinavian spa.
Yeah.
And you got to be silent. And I'm like, wow, cool. So we do this like sauna, cold plunge, hot bath. So we do like the lap around the spa.
Retirement guy.
And, and my wife's like, oh, let's do another lap. I'm like, we've been here for an hour and a half. This place is so boring. I mean, people go crazy in these places where you sit in silence. So like, you can go do another lap. I'm going out. Like, it's too much. Like, I'm way too active for those places. So we did that. It was a closing day of Whistler, raining, and we went to the cruises for Thanksgiving. That was amazing. We had an amazing time. So it's been great. I try to eat as much poutine, bacon, beer. I mean, I'm trying to live.
Absolutely.
It's been good. I actually went for sushi and a beer at lunch. I mean, I feel like my second office day, and I've held that pretty good. 42 years old. First day in the office was yesterday. I actually got in a little late today, but went for lunch. Was like, I'm never beer. I mean, that's what the guys do, and
Yeah.
So
Upper
been cool.
middle management guy.
Exactly. Yeah.
But back to your list, Brian. So
All right.
we're going to do some word associations.
Sure. Yeah. So what's the word association for the Cannondale XC bike and the Cannondale DH bike?
Wow. The word association. Give me an example of what you're wanting. I mean, because the first thing that comes to mind is
three-legged cat.
Three-legged cat. I mean, this could be a three-legged cat because that bottom bracket was so high. I mean, three-legged cat works well.
Okay. All right. And then 99 was the stab.
That was the stab. Oh, tank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With Marzocchi again.
Yeah, that was, I mean, that bike worked really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, Monster Tees. What else did it have that was pretty odd? We had Monster Tees, big bulky bike. I mean, that bike must have weighed what?
Was that the era where they had the down tube that looked like it had been in a car crash?
Yeah, it had like the S-bend.
Have
Blue
you
and
seen
grey.
them?
I have seen.
Henry's, This is before Henry's.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Is that the bike?
Yeah, sick.
Oh,
Thanks,
that's
man.
exactly it. Yeah, look at the seat. I mean, that seat's horrific.
Everything. They just look like they've been crashed into a wall. It's incredible.
And so that was the first bike I got a top 10 on in Big Bear, California. I was still a junior.
Still a junior, yeah.
Yeah, but back then we never had junior racing. So you went to World Cup, you're in the elites, and top 80 goes through to the final. So it was quite tough qualifying.
Yeah.
I'd say the last bike was Tank, which leads us nicely onto the next bike, I suppose.
I believe the next one is you went to the orange team.
I went to the orange, so that would be that was like a big BMX.
I thought you were going to say filing cabinet.
Not
Sorry,
far
orange.
Off. Not far off. I mean, it was pretty square. But it was, I mean, the race bikes were a little bit lighter than the standard bikes, but that bike was so small. Like I saw a video recently circulating of world champs in Vail, Colorado. That bike was tiny.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
How
did we race them?
On as well. He had a similar thing when he was on the MBUK team. And this tiny pink orange, which is like, it's hard to even see it in the frame sometimes.
Yep.
He's just so big over it.
I wanted one real bad. It was a 222?
222, yeah.
I wanted one so badly.
Well, I reviewed one recently and I loved it.
Oh, really?
That multi-link bike. I mean, I loved it in like, to put it, I kind of loved it in the way that you love one of your parents. You accept they're not perfect, but they just did their best. And you're just like, God, it felt so familiar. Yeah. It was like reliving a little British mountain biker's dream.
You really like the geometry on that bike, though, right?
I really like the
that's
geometry.
And
the suspension. Well, let's not get into it, but yeah, I mean, it was a whole thing.
So was this a new bike or was this the
This is a new
2001?
No,
new
no,
one.
no, yeah.
I was thinking about it going, you really love the suspension on it. Oh, this is interesting.
Yeah, you're just
So they
like,
still
I've
make,
got
so they
something
just
else.
made a new 222.
No, they've got like their one of their enduro bikes.
Ah, okay.
But it's absolutely black. They're not everyone's cup of tea, but my cup of tea, perhaps.
Very British.
Very British.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's by law. They have to like that. And grey breakfast. All right. Moving on. Then you rode an Haro branded Intense.
Yeah, I think Intense made it specifically for horror.
Yeah.
It was like
a DHR.
it was a DHR. Yeah. One word for that. I mean, you guys could have prepped me. I mean, I know you did prep me, but I actually didn't read the email. I was like, we'll just wing it. That bike was good. I mean, that bike, the suspension was great on that bike.
What did it have?
Well, it had Manitou suspension. I mean, fork definitely wasn't amazing. I mean, that thing.
What was it? Was it Dorado by then, or
It was a Dorado.
Was it Dorado?
That
Okay.
thing had a lot of flex to it, and then we actually tested out a new Dorado towards the end of the last round of the Norbers, and it worked amazingly well. But I don't think it almost failed. So they went back to drawing board. And it seemed like they only released that fork like maybe 7 or 8 years later.
Right.
When we think about inverted forks, you wouldn't have been, I guess you'd have still been on SRAM. I think it was 2011, Monson and G. Atherton had an inverted 40.
Oh, right.
I don't know, was there any after that moment of riding the Dorado, was there any interest to go back to an inverted fork from your end?
We did it on Honda. So after
of
Horror, we
course,
went to
yeah.
Honda, and a big part of that development was
The
to
Showas.
stiffen up the fork.
Mm.
But you know, we had carbon stanchion tubes, so like that fork was really advanced.
Mm.
That's
Um,
I'd
yeah.
forgotten that.
Yeah.
I would love to check one out today. I'd love to take a look at one today.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. I pulled it off. I got it off the wall maybe a year ago, and the suspension's still amazing and very similar to what we're running now.
Mm.
Yeah, amazing bike. So I mean, one word for the Honda, incredible.
I was
It's amazing
literally
what
going to
they built.
skip over the. I was just going to
Oh, we
skip
gonna?
over the Honda. Oh, we've talked about it. No, I'm kidding.
There was so many rumors about like them getting melted down and stuff after
Oh, they
the
just
team resolved.
they didn't melt. Yeah, so there's 2 left. I've got one, and there's one in museum, and the rest all got crushed.
Mm.
So
Oh, they did
yeah,
actually get
yeah,
crushed.
they do. Yeah.
Oh wow.
What was it like, working for a big, did it feel like you were working for a big sort of out of industry, I suppose,
Oh,
company?
for sure. I mean, we had like the full test team would fly in for our first ride, and first run down the trail, they would go like, "Cool, what did you like? What didn't you like?" And I'm like, "Well, I didn't actually know where I was going. I just need to still figure out this trail." And it'd be like down Mount Fuji was like a 15-minute downhill, and so straight away we need to give feedback. So it was a super interesting period because we went through like frame analysis, how the frame flexed, how we could improve the frame, how we could get free up the bike coasting because it ran 2 chains, so our bike didn't freewheel very well.
Mm.
There's a lot of drag, so trying to free that up, and it was great. It was such a good learning curve, and then you got a guy pulling out a drill just to drill into the frame to get it to flex more, and we did some really cool stuff.
Wild. Did you the one that you ended up racing on?
Yeah.
How close was it to what you were like as you were iterating on those things and the goals you were trying to get to? Were you happy with it, or was
the test from a test bike to race bike?
Yeah.
Oh, the test bikes were full of holes, and yeah, you couldn't ride it. It would be dangerous. So we'd make the bike as stiff as possible, and then go through all the changes. And as you'd go, like there's certain things. If the bike's really stiff, it gives you a sensation of the handlebars being very high. If the front end's stiff, so they'd pull out this drill and drill it in places where there's a lot of metal in the frame, and then they'd go bigger on the holes and add another hole, and then eventually it'd be like the sensation is the bars are feeling too low, and it's kind of not going to break in or whatever. And then they go, cool, so they've got the right point, and then they'll mark it down, and that's how the next step would be to make the race frame off that. So
Oh, wild.
yeah, it was interesting, like a full on team of test pilots and engineers. And
what year was that?
so that was from 04 to 07. Yeah.
That's kind of unheard of at that time, though, in the bike industry. There was no, none of the other major brands had people in lab coats taking down Excel data,
No, definitely not. I mean, until now.
Yeah.
It's taken that long. I mean, this year's the first year where I've seen testing to that kind of,
Really?
to that level. Yeah.
Well, I guess let's not skip Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
You,
Big part of it.
what was the first Santa Cruz model you raced?
The V10.
It was straight to the V10?
Straight to
Okay.
the V10. But the 10-inch travel V10.
The actual V10.
The actual V10. And it was only until Fox came along that we then dropped to 8.5 inch setting. But before then, we rode the 10-inch
The
setting.
10-inch one.
Yeah.
How long did you like? Because there was the RockShox era and then the Fox era.
Yeah. So we went to Fox in 2012.
Okay.
That was quite like a coupe at the time for Fox. It felt like. I remember, especially you and PT kind of going over.
Yeah.
I remember initially it looked really, almost looked, to put it, it was weird to see you guys without those black fork legs and.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
What was that? What was that change like?
It was good. I mean, at that point, like Fox have such great race support, and they brought this level in that we weren't seeing of support and testing, and so that was really important to move across. And it was different. Yeah, we also went from SRAM to Shimano, so there were some big changes then.
So yeah, let's get back to word association for both eras, of Santa Cruz of the V10.
Oh,
Fox
there were
era,
many. I mean, there were
RockShox
so
era,
many
I know.
eras then. It's hard to. Yeah, it was cool. I had a good time. Put cool.
You
Cool,
can put cool.
that's a good
Yeah,
one.
put whatever
Cool.
you want. Yeah.
It was cool.
And then now the Norco.
No, okay.
Now the Norco. The reason we're here.
And so one word for the downhill bike: adjustable. Everything is adjustable and independently adjustable. So, I mean, absolutely everything.
Sick.
You mentioned then about the quality, maybe, but the depth of testing you're able to do now.
Oh yeah.
This last year. Can you describe what you're trying to hit or what you're doing differently now that makes it feel just that much more, I don't know if it's structured or repeatable or just valid?
Well, the first test session on Norco, we've got a suspension engineer. So we've got an in-house suspension guy, Colin Ryan, incredibly smart, bright guy. And he's equipped with dynos and everything you need for suspension, which I'd never seen before. There's no bike brand that I've been on that's got a suspension guy in-house.
Really?
Yeah. And so then you've got Adrian Ward who heads up who's heading up the project of the downhill bike. And so this level of professionalism of bringing suspension and everything dynoed and ready to go, and a bike that they thought would fit something really close to what I was used to. So we started in a good place and just got better and better from there. So
Do you think that sort of, because it feels sometimes, at least my very limited experience at World Cups and within teams, is that sometimes riders feel I think because of wider cultural ways that we do the sport, is that having like an ultra professional approach is maybe almost like a bit too much expectation, or it makes them feel a bit, they want to talk about being expressive and having fun. Do you think that that's something that, the ceiling of performance is higher, so everyone kind of needs to just kind of step up to it like they do in other sports? Or is it?
yeah, I mean, have you
because
seen
we're doing something so
racing
different?
right now? I mean, look at it. It's, if you look at the World Cup, it's so inconsistent. Because it's the competition is so high, so you need this level of support to race well. You're right in saying it takes quite a bit of the fun away, but if you look at the World Cup 15 years ago to what it is now, or 10 years ago to what it is now, it's a lot less fun in terms of like the party is not as big as it used to be. If you have a back-to-back World Cup, there's no party. 10 years ago there was just as big a party after the first race as there was into the second. Everything's got more professional. It's a lot harder to perform right now.
And if we went back to 20-year-old Greg Menard and gave him a team of this level of professionalism, that's this structure, etc., is that something that you'd have thrived on, or do you think it would have maybe been, because sometimes people do just want to have fun, and that's the draw of mountain biking in a lot of ways?
Yeah, it would be hard to say.
Yeah, of course.
Very hard to answer. But I think that's the route I chose. When I chose to go to Honda, it was because I was going to learn a whole lot of and gain a whole lot of experience from this company and understanding how they test and develop. I mean, to me, that was really cool. And I think that's what's kind of led me down the path that I have. I love working with product. I love testing and developing bikes. So, I do still enjoy having a good time on a bike, but there's also this element of building a great bike. And if, there's nothing better than when you get on a bike and you just feel confident. And that will all trickle through the bike. So, if we can make the bike more confident for a racer, it then will go through into the production bikes and hopefully you can feel 10-15% more confident on your bike. I mean, that's an amazing feeling.
Yes.
And then you can have a lot more fun. So what level of fun do you want to have?
So I mean, you and I have so many similarities.
Yeah.
Just so many. But one of them is that we're both using TRP drivetrains and brakes right now.
Yeah.
How do you feel about them?
You know, it's been great.
Mm-hmm.
The brakes are unbelievable. And that's one of the reasons why we went the TRP route.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I can't complain about anything. Everything's worked really well.
You know, it's with two major drivetrain manufacturers kind of like dominating the landscape. And you've had a lot of experience with both of them.
Sure.
It's always interesting to see people who then switch off. And yeah, was it weird? Were you worried about it?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, and we got onto TRP, and you know, we knew the brakes were good. When I went through testing, the brakes were incredible, and they had this new brake coming out that we had some prototypes of, and it was really adjustable. And then I bent some cranks, and we're like, whoa. And so TRP got straight onto it and manufactured some new cranks. They've been solid ever since. So, you know, it's nice to see a company like stepping in when there's a problem, fixing it, and moving forward. I mean, that's amazing.
Are you the reason that they've like massively overbuilt that crank?
Potentially. I mean,
okay, interesting.
my 86 kilo dry weights is probably half the reason.
And
do you think it's over-engineered? Do you?
No, it's I think it's
Is it
like
bulky?
when were you riding the carbon or the aluminum?
The
one?
aluminum, yeah.
They were saying they were like, we could take a lot of weight out of this thing
Okay.
if we wanted,
I
but
don't
we're
know.
erring on the side of bomb-proof.
Have
And
you
same
ever
for the carbon one.
had a crank that's failed?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's possibly one of the worst things. Besides the handlebar,
When
the
I
crank's
was
pretty bad.
when I was 11 years old and getting into BMX racing, there was a kid in front of me who crashed, and he was like the one kid on the BMX track who had aluminum cranks, and he was like hot shit. He had all the fancy gadgets, and yeah, he landed, came up short on a double, snapped his cranks, and the crank went through his calf. Just like the shard of it was awful.
Yeah, so you must remember the old profile BMX cranks. The 3P. Well, was it 3Ps? Yeah, 3Ps, the hollow.
Mm-hmm.
I was dirt jumping, and I overjumped this jump and landed on the flats, and I snapped one of those cranks, but it snapped down. And so this whole hollow bit just ripped up my leg under my kneecap. And so, you know, the cut was so deep, I didn't really feel much pain. And so as I looked down, I just see this, all like my bone exposed down my shin. And I was like, and this blood just pouring down the bottom of the cut into my shoe. And I mean, I'd hate to snap another crank.
Yeah.
I mean, let's keep them over-engineered.
Cranks are a really boring product until they're not.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They're also, when people ask for, I don't know, like crank reviews and stuff, it's hard because unless they break,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like they're normally pretty similar in terms of, I can't imagine I've ever
They hold your pedal in the same place.
Yeah.
There's no like crank geometry.
But also there's no like, you know, now we're all on like big axles.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like one's flexing, one's not really.
Yeah, it's really hard to feel the flex of a crank.
Yeah.
No. But the brakes are good.
Yeah.
And very different, and everybody's like got their preferences.
So just for clarity as well, are you an employee of Norco now? Or are you?
I think I'm acting like one cruising around the office for my second day, but
because how does that? Are you? Yeah, what is your role with Norco now exactly, and how does that interplay with the team?
So yeah, it's kind of it was really hard to come up with a position for it, but we put it down to director.
Nice.
I'm just the team director, so because I get involved on the performance side as well as the technical side, and then, you know, product as well. So I've been working with product, which is really cool because it's been a real long time since I last got involved with testing bikes and getting behind the scenes of bikes. And so it's nice. I mean, I love it. I've always loved it, but I've never had the opportunity to really get hands on. I mean, it's been at least probably 13 years since I last tested a production bike in production. So it's really nice to get behind the scenes, get testing on some e-bikes and some trail bikes and give some feedback and try and build some real good product.
Was it hard when you left Santa Cruz, sort of having, you know, almost synonymous with the V10 in terms of its development, especially the bigger wheeled ones, and almost giving that project away as much as it was leaving the team and the people, but also like this sort of, like your sort of manifestation of so many hours of probably conversation and testing, and now it's someone else's.
Yeah, I mean, it's always going to be hard. It is. But, when I got into this environment where, we're trying to build the fastest bike in the world, I mean, that's exciting. We changed so many things through the season and tested so many different settings and adjustments, and it's exciting. It's an evolving project.
I think I'd love to hear about like your take on the season, but I imagine it wasn't the season you'd hoped for.
Oh man,
obviously.
you hit the nail on the head. I mean, I got injured in Fort William, and so I was like, this is supposed to be my last season, and here I've got a separated shoulder. And so I reviewed all the footage to see the crash, because luckily we had someone, Kirk McDowell actually saw the crash, so we filmed it. And I was like reviewing all the footage, I could see like the swing arm just being a little soft. And I think that the rear wheel wasn't tracking the front wheel. And I think that could have been the cause of it. So we spoke to the engineers, we had a little bit of a meeting, and within a few days they'd wrapped the swing arm to be like 18% stiffer. And so I decided to try and keep racing through the season, because there's no better test track than a racetrack. There's just no other place to test, like with the speeds and how rough the track gets. And so I decided to try and keep riding through Poland, and although I was getting kind of competitive and pissed off that I wasn't able to make it through the rounds, being injured, it's the main reason why we were there was to develop and to keep testing that bike.
And so did you come into the season knowing that it would be your last? And when you had that crash, was there a thought of, fuck it, this is the penultimate, because I need to have a full season?
Now that happened after Montserrat as well. I mean, that was such a shitty race, but it's
yeah, you were annoyed with Montserrat.
Hey? I was scattered. Yeah, I felt like I could have done a lot better, and I had a good practice. I did good time training, but I just didn't. The conditions changed. It rained, and I just didn't realize how much pressure I'd put on myself. And anyway,
anyway, moving on.
Yeah, it's I had no pressure from Norco. They just said if this is your last season, that's fine. If you want to do another one after this, that's cool too. And but it just felt right. I think where we're going with the team, it's exciting. So half the season I've spent looking into new riders, working on contracts, and I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed plotting, strategizing, and getting everything ready for next season.
Did you just say new riders?
I did.
No, I think you did.
I think
you did.
So we might get a couple of new riders, and so it's exciting. I've enjoyed it, but then working also on the product, like I said, but then as well as the performance of the riders. I've got I've had ideas for years that how we can implement these ideas into racing to benefit the riders. And when you look at teams like Specialized and Common Cell, I mean, those teams are jacked up to race. They've got
like winning machines,
a clean direction of what they need to do.
What about that Trek team?
What do you mean?
You keeping an eye on that team too?
What's happening there?
I'm just being a dick.
Is there something I don't know?
Oh no, nothing.
So when you look at these two teams, and you've got Anne-Marie changing bikes, not changing bike, but changing like the stiffness of his bike once it rained in Leger and Val de Sol. I mean, that's another level of racing.
Those two teams do have, we've spoken about it before, but culturally they seem to have got. I think the Specialized were kind of the first two at that Gravity.
Yeah,
the culture just seemed to be so kind of like elite. It felt like it was sort of like was taking like the right amount of like European road cycling culture, not overdoing it, but you know what I mean, just and then subsequent that Common Cell team. But
you're 100% right, culture, and those teams have a culture around performance, and that's what we're going to be building. And to me, it's important, and I want to be mixing it up with those two teams. I think we can do stuff slightly different to how they're doing it, but our drive is to have a performance culture in the team, and that's what we've got.
Before we came in, Henry was chatting about like what would you build as a team if you couldn't take any of your existing players? Like what would
if you had a blank checkbook, and you had to sign, say, a roster of a female and male elite, and a female and male like up and comer. They can be in contract somewhere else.
Yeah,
you could pay them $1 billion to pull out of it. Which riders would you? Who do you think?
If you're going to be paying $1 billion, I hope I'd be on that list as well. I'll go back at 43 and do another season.
But I mean, who's the riders that really, both as rivals and also as people you think like they've got something special.
You're right in saying it's hard. It's hard picking a team when not all riders' contracts are up.
Mm.
I mean, Loic Bruni would definitely be one of them. Loris Vergier, 2 picks. On the female side, I'd stick with the Gracie. I'd stick with the Gracie.
Let's give her $1 billion.
Yeah.
She had a great end to the
Incredible
season.
season,
Such a sick run.
And what's amazing as a team, like, you know, she started off the season, she just built race after race. She got injured, but we've seen her just improve. And you know, it's one of the reasons why I pulled in Ellen Milway into the team was Ellen was next with Rachel Atherton through her successful career. So like, there's no better person to have next to Gracie but Ellen. And it showed itself, you know, 4th at the World Champs, 2nd in the final round of the World Cup. I mean, that's an amazing finish. So back to those riders. What were we on?
Juniors.
I mean, flip this. There's just so many. I mean, you look at Asa, you got the Elran.
Yeah, those brothers are
Brothers are amazing. There's some Kiwis in there. Aussies, on both female and male. So yeah,
there was a bit of a sort of I don't know. I think, you know, we mentioned nationalities there, and it's almost become like almost like a running joke of the last 5 years, where the French just seem to just, especially in the male elite category, just churn out race winners who can just get it done often. There's also been talk, I know, around World Champs South Africa and how they allocated the jersey. I think to Theo, he didn't get one, even though he could get to the race and stuff. How much do you think that nationality governing bodies, we talk about culture, we talk about performance, how much do you think that helps or in fact hinders?
Well, I mean, just look at the French. You've got Manuel Huber, who's been there for years, who's like, they've been dominant since the 90s. You know, they've got a great national series, great national team coach. They've taken it very seriously from the 90s. So I think it's super important. You've seen like what you've seen in the last couple of years is the US starting to come up with some strong riders,
and Canada,
and Canada. But you know, you go to like the US Open, and suddenly you see all these young kids coming through. It's really cool to see. So it seems like as soon as you got a series going that's really strong, and you got the right people in the national selectors position, they can build some strong teams going to World Champs. I mean, Australia had a powerful push when Sam Hill was a junior. Scotty Sharples used to run that program, and Paul Biggs, and they had an amazing team, super strong team. UK had a run for a couple of years as well. But yeah, the French have always, they haven't been second, they've been at the top.
If we look at next year's calendar, sorry to just get in there, Brian, the 2 rounds in France, I believe, and then 2 rounds basically on the border of France. I think, is it Le Tuile?
So Coolidge is going to be dominant.
I mean, basically
he loves racing in France, right?
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. How much difference do you think that makes as well? Because, I mean, coming from the Southern Hemisphere, it's just a long way to go. And then it's like, we've got 2 weeks downtime between the race.
Yeah.
Well, it's good for everyone else that's got a 5-hour drive home. It's a nightmare for me.
For sure. To spend all of my money.
Well, I mean, that's what, you know, it's just one of those things, coming from the Southern Hemisphere, and you have to base yourself in Europe or in the Northern Hemisphere. It's just one of those things. It's tough, but
is that something you'd like to see change in coming years, do you think?
To what?
To see like more World Cups, I suppose.
More World Cups or more World Cups globally. I mean,
it's more spread out, I think.
You know, it's then all of a sudden your travel expense is going to get really heavy. I mean, you know, we've got trucks and great team support in Europe, but then when you go to Australia, you're in like a white tent. So it makes it quite difficult. Then for a team like to travel to all these different locations, it's just going to add more pressure to the budget. So I don't know how it's going to.
Spoken like true management.
Yeah.
Look, all of a sudden, management Greg comes out.
Never used to bother me, but now it does.
Winning the home World Champs was nice, but it's pretty expensive.
You know, I used to like that. You used to choose like an exotic location every season. I thought that was quite cool. We've missed that. I think it's important that we do go to these locations. Like we used to race in Brazil, and we had a few years where we went down there, and then to South Africa, then to Cairns. I think I need to mix that up a bit. But having too many outside of Europe makes it really tough on the team. And it's so much nicer as a racer having the team track and pits all set up.